Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss some interview questions on network and cybersecurity. This is the video part 3. I already made part 1 and part 2, and I'm also planning to launch more videos on a similar topic. So if you're new to my channel, do subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on the similar topic. My name is Prab Nair. For more information, you can refer my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Okay, so we are starting with the first interview question, what is called as what is DNS cache poisoning attack and how to prevent this. So let me first explain you what is DNS. DNS is a service which translates name to IP and IP to name. That is what is called DNS. See, let's take a live example. When we're talking about a smartphone, okay, we basically save a lot of numbers with their associate name. If I ask you, do you remember the number of your friend? So it is difficult for you to remember, but you can search the number by the name. So when you type the name in your phone directory or mobile phone directory, they will map that name with the number. And that is how you can able to locate the number and you can call that person. Same thing happen with our internet. It is difficult for us to locate, it is difficult for us to remember the services with their IP address. So we have translated the IP address into the number. Example like this is my web server we have. And this web server is hosted on 1.1.1.1 IP. And then we have a DNS server, which is translated on 2.1.1.1. So now we have a customer here, example. So we have a customer. He wished to access the website. Now, if you go by the networking concept, if you want to access any file, we need to type the IP address by which we can able to locate the host in the network, because IP address is the only way we can able to locate the host. So customer is difficult for him to remember the IP address. Forget about that. If I ask you google.com IP, it is difficult for you to remember. But every day you open the google.com website to search your things. So what happened is the customer want a server who can translate the name to IP. So he mentioned in his IP address configuration called preferred DNS.2.1.1.1. It means he sent a request to this DNS server and asking about, yeah, I'm looking for this name map with which IP, because I want to access the particular host. This DNS server will say, okay, you can check the 1.1.1 because the request you're looking for, it is mapped on 1.1.1. And by this way, customer can able to access the page and page is loaded on a browser. So this is basically called as a DNS. Now what happen is, it is very important to maintain the integrity of the records, because if data is inaccurate mentioned in DNS, then it could lead to other things also. Example, right now customers was looking for google.com, and here the customer is completely rely on the DNS only, that whatever the response I'm getting from DNS, I can trust that. So instead of google.com translated to 1.1, if it translated to some other IP, the user will be redirected to that IP. It is same like you ask me any question, Prab, I'm struggling with this topic, and I basically taught you a wrong concept, and based on a wrong concept you applied in the production and it is boom. Then definitely you will not going to trust me again and you will not going to ask me any question. Same thing happened here. The attacker basically misuse this opportunity. And what happened here is they configure one fake DNS server. Let me draw it. So now we're going to discuss about DNS cache poisoning attack. Okay. So DNS cache poisoning attack is an act of entering the false information into the DNS cache, so that DNS query return an incorrect response and user are directed to the wrong website. So how it happened? So this is my fake DNS server, which claimed to be a authorized DNS server for facebook.com. Just imagine. Okay. And this is the Facebook DNS server of Singapore. And in his cache, they basically maintain the information that 1.1.1.1 is mapped to fb.com. And now we have a user here. So user basically mentioned in his preferred DNS that 9.1.1.1, which is basically this IP only. So customer is looking for facebook.com And from the cache, he provide the information that, okay, it is on 1.1.1. And by this way, customer is basically connect with the Facebook website, which is hosted on 1.1.1.1. Now here is the trick. Now what attacker did, attacker configured the fake DNS server and push the new records. Hey, I'm your authorized DNS server and this is the new entry. Entry is 2.1.1.1 is the new Facebook web server IP. And based on that, what happened is DNS accept without verifying and update the new entry is okay. Now if anyone searching for facebook.com, it will be mapped to 2.1.1.1. So now customer again requested for facebook.com and this time they redirect to 2.1.1.1 and 2.1.1.1 is basically the hacker website, and hacker website basically provide the page. So, in order to convey any social message, political message, economic message, religious message, hacker basically do this kind of a technique. They discover some common websites, which is a popular websites, and they try to manipulate their associate DNS entries. And by this way, they redirect them to some other IPs, other website, which basically publish the different kind of information. So this is basically called as a DNS poisoning attack. And it is same thing mentioned here. Attacker may poison the DNS cache by pretending to the DNS name server, sending a request to DNS resolver, and then faking the response when DNS server asks for the name server. And this is possible because DNS server use a UDP. This is another interview question. How this possible? Anyone can configure as a DNS server and push for the entry. Why? Because DNS work on the UDP, and UDP without doing handshake, they validate the connection. Whereas a TCP validate the connection based on a three-way handshake. So there is no way of verifying. Okay. UDP basically established the connection without handshake, whereas a TCP basically established the connection with handshake. DNS work on the port number 53, and that is a UDP protocol. That is why any server used to validate the other server details. So what is the countermeasure, Prab? The countermeasure is basically introduce the DNSSEC. DNSSEC basically providing extra service, which is used to providing the integrity and authenticity to the records. How? Let me explain you with the reference. Now let's take an example that we have this DNS server. Okay. And this is basically the cache which say that fb.com is redirected to 1.1.1. And actually fb.com is hosted, fb.com website is hosted on 1.1.1.1. But there is an attacker also. What attacker did, attacker host one website. Attacker host one website which is 2.1.1.1. Okay. So now what happened as a user? So we have a user here. User has requested for facebook.com. From the cache, they say facebook.com on 1.1.1. And by this way, he connect with the 1.1.1. Now we have a user 2. He also requested for facebook.com, but this time what happened? Attacker already pushed for the new entry. Here the attacker is there. He pushed for the new entry that fb.com 1.1.1 is not, it is basically called as a 2.1.1. Okay, he claimed to be authorized DNS server for this Facebook server. Okay, making him believe by using a UDP protocol, and this is how he updated the entry called 2.1.1. And by this way, when user redirect, it is redirect on 2.1.1.1. And by this way, he connect with the fake website. So what is the countermeasure? I just want an authorized DNS server to update the records. So what happened whenever they're sending a record? Suppose this is the record we have. This record will be digitally signed by the authorized DNS server, which means they use their private key to sign the records. And when they're sending to this DNS server maintaining a public key of the authorized server. So whenever they receive the entry, they will first verify the authenticity records by decrypting with the public key of the signature. Okay. So when he receives the record, it has a signature. They will apply the associate public key, and by which way they can verify, okay, this is coming from my authorized DNS server, and then only they update. So DNSSEC is basically offer the authenticity and integrity for the DNS record function. Okay. So So that's why we say DNSSEC is a short for a domain name system security extension, and it is mean for verifying the DNS data integrity and authenticity. So I'm sure you find this question useful, and let's move to the next interview question. Okay, so question is, can you explain me about DLP, which is called as the data loss prevention? So if you go by the description of the DLP is a practice of detecting and preventing data breaches, exfiltration of sensitive data. Now what is that? See, so far what happened, whatever the solution we have discussed, example, there is a firewall, okay, and it is basically called as the internet. Then we have a switch. We have a system A, we have a system B, we have a system C. Okay, so this is my internal network. Okay, so now what happened is any traffic which is coming from outside, firewall can able to block. So we have a dedicated solution which is used to protect my internal network from external. But what about the internal threat? Now some employees basically do some stupidity. They click on some links and all that, which creating a reverse connection. It means now the data is going not from outside, they're going from inside to outside in any medium. Okay, so we need a solution for that, and that is where the DLP come into the picture. DLP basically ensure any unauthorized data or any sensitive data should not live in an unauthorized manner. One example is we have a policy which is clearly say you're not supposed to share the PII data, personal identifier information, to anyone. Now there is one malicious employee who tried to connect the pen drive to his system and trying to copy the data. So there will be endpoint DLP installed in the system A, which prevent them from copying, because by just injecting a pen drive, you copying a data, it means you're moving out the data from your company laptop to the external. Now there are some users who wish to upload the data on a Gmail and all that. So traffic is basically goes through the network. So here we can install the NDLP. We have a two type of DLP team. Endpoint DLP, which is installed in every host, and network-based DLP, which is installed on the border of the network. Endpoint DLP, which is installed on every host, and NDLP mean network-based data loss prevention, which is installed on the border of the network. So if A is sending any kind of a traffic outside, NDLP will first block the traffic. It doesn't drop, it block. Ask for the business justification. If business justification is basically true, then they release the data. So by this way, while data in transit, it maintains the security. When you're connecting a pen drive and copying the data, that is the data in use, that is also they're providing a security. So by end of the day, ultimate goal of the DLP is to protect your data, intellectual properties and other stuff. Okay, and it ensure data should not live in an unauthorized manner. So when I say the word exfiltration means data leaving in an unauthorized manner from internal network, and it actually prevent. So organization basically use DLP to protect and secure the data and comply with the regulations. One more important thing which is I would like to discuss out of this topic is, for when you're implementing a DLP in the organization, it is not possible for you to protect all kind of a data. So you need to classify and categorize the data. That's the most important thing you have to do. That is why data sensitivity is very important. So you cannot able to protect all the data. Okay, we need to classify and categorize. And today DLP is used to protect the PII, it is used to protect the intellectual property. And common cause of data leak is insider threat and negligent data exposure. And for that reason only, we introduce the DLP. Okay, let's move to the next interview question. Okay, so next interview question is, what is blacklisting and whitelisting? Okay, so whitelisting involves blocking the user from visiting any site or internet resource except for those in an approved list, and blacklist security approach where the users are allowed to visit any website or internet resource except those on the prohibited list. Okay, so let me give you a live example. Whitelisting means you can say allow this and deny all, which is actually easy to maintain. Allow this and deny all. Provide an example is, you can browse google.com, you can browse your banking website, you can browse the company website, but anything outside of this range, you get an error. So that is called as a whitelisting, which is more restrictive and it is more secure because all sites are blocked by the default. But in the blacklisting, we say block this, example, block youtube.com, gmail.com and allow this. Okay, sorry, allow block gmail.com or youtube.com or facebook.com, and apart from anything is not in the list, allow. So it is difficult to maintain the blacklist. Okay, so whitelist is just like a guest list we have when we throw any party and all that in the clubs and cafe, we need to give them a guest list. So any person is not in the guest list, it's not allowed. So that is called as a whitelisting. But in the case of blacklisting, which is a security approach, which say allow, block this, which is in a list, and rest of the thing allowed. So it is difficult for us to maintain the blacklist websites. Okay. So these are the things which is basically used in your DLPs and other content filtering system. Okay. So whitelisting is far more secure because all sites are blocked by the default, and blacklisting is a security approach where the users are allowed to visit any website or internet resource except those in a prohibited list. So problem with the blacklisting is that it is impossible to know and list every website the user should not visit. Okay, so that's why it is very difficult. So better go by the whitelisting approach. So they will ask you in the interview also which is the most effective. So answer is whitelisting. Okay. So sometimes what happened, the interviewer want to know whether you have a knowledge of the tools. Okay, so I thought I will add one question on the knowledge based tool. So can you tell me about the tools used for the network packet capturing? So we have some tools like TCP dump, we have a Wireshark, we have a T-Shark, we have a WinDump. So these are the utilities we have that we basically use for network packet capturing. If you wish to add, your suggestion of the tool, you can just share your view on the comment box. Okay. So first we have a TCP dump. So TCP dump is a command line utility actually. Okay. So TCP dump is a command line utility. Okay. Which is available for multiple operating systems such as Linux based platforms and everything. Then we have a Wireshark. Wireshark is a GUI. Okay. Which is available for the version of Microsoft also and Linux also. Then we also have a T-Shark. T-Shark is basically very lightweight. When your requirement is to monitor, but computation is basically concerned, you don't want anything which compute more and more memory. In that case, we can go for T-Shark. So T-Shark is a lightweight answer to those who want a functionality of Wireshark, but the slim profile of a TCP dump. That is called as a T-Shark. And last is basically WinDump. WinDump. Yeah. So due to the success of TCP dump, okay, on the Unix like operating system, it was ported over to the Windows platform. So this simply means it was cloned to allow for the Windows packet capture. Okay, so like TCP dump, WinDump is a command line tool. Its output can be saved to a file for a deeper analysis by the third party. So WinDump is used in much the same way that TCP dump in a nearly every aspect. In fact, command line options are same and the result tend to be pretty much identical. Okay. So TCP dump used in a Linux base. Alternate of that in Windows, we have a WinDump utility. So these all are basically used for packet capturing activities. Let's move to the next question. So next question is basically what is ransomware? Ransomware is one of the hot topic. Okay, and it is one of the common trend in cybersecurity and network security. So you can expect one or two questions on ransomware. So ransom mean asking money, and ware is a kind of malware. So ransomware is a kind of a technique in which the hacker gain access to the systems, and further they can able to encrypt the files of the target systems. Their ultimate goal is to impact the availability and integrity of a data and operation of the enterprise. So example, like we have a hacker here. Okay, so he hacked into the system. And once he basically hacked, he further encrypt the data. And keep the key with them, because in the encryption, the key is the important mechanism. So key they basically keep with them. It is same like, they lock the box. Okay, and the key it is basically with them. That is how the technique works. Okay. So hacker hack into the system, encrypt the data and keep the key with them and ask for the ransom. If you give me money, I will give you a key by which you can able to decrypt. Okay. So actually this encryption is a security parameter, but here this security parameter was used as an offensive practice. So by encrypting this file, they demand a ransom payment for the decryption key, and cyber attacker places the organization in a position where they're paying the ransom is the easiest and cheapest way to regain access to their files, because they know if file is basically not available, it impacts the business. So we have a different type of ransomware. We have Maze, which is a very popular one. It is one of the famous for being the first ransomware variant to combine file encryption and data theft. So when target started refusing to pay ransom, the Maze began collecting sensitive data from a victim computer before encrypting it. And if ransom demand were not met, the data would be publicly exposed or sold to its highest bidder. And the potential for inexpensive data breach was used as additional incentive to pay up. Then second, we have a Lapsus. So Lapsus is a South American ransomware gang that has been linked to a cyber attack on some high profile targets. And the cyber gang is known for its extortion, threatening the release of sensitive information if demand by its victim are not made. So the group has boasted breaking into the Nvidia, Samsung, Ubisoft. So group users also stolen the source codes to disguise the malware files as a trustworthy. The third ransomware, we have a Lockbit. Lockbit is a data encryption malware which is operating since September 2019, and recent was the ransomware as a service. So this piece of ransomware was developed to encrypt the large organization rapidly as a way to prevent its detecting quickly by security appliance and its IT and SOC team. And the last is basically called as a Dear Cry. So in March 2021, Microsoft released the patch for the 4 vulnerability within the Microsoft Exchange server. And Dear Cry is the new variant designed to take advantage of 4 recently disclosed vulnerabilities in the Microsoft Exchange. So these are some of the common examples we have for the ransomware. Now question is that how to prevent ransomware attack, because on one side you're talking about ransomware. But what is a way to prevent the ransomware attack? So as a network security and cybersecurity professional, you must be familiar with the techniques. So secure data backups, that is the most effective technique we have, because if data is encrypted, we can basically obtain the copy of a data and we can reuse the data for the business purpose. Second is conduct the security awareness training for the team. So example, like you can tell them about do not click on the links whenever you receive some kind of a suspicious links and all that. Please report to the help desk, all those things. So that is something you can do. In the awareness training, we also tell them about don't share any information on social media, don't publish any information on social media. Whenever you want to connect to the VPN, whenever you want to connect to the enterprise, use VPN, implement the strong user authentication, update routing patches on our systems, and implement the principle of least privilege. See why I'm talking about principle of least privilege. Example, like this is the server we have. Okay, so we have a server here and we have a hacker. So hacker hack into the server. Okay, hacker hack into the server. Now what happened? They will take the current user privilege and by which they execute the function. They use a current user privilege and by which they try to execute the function. Okay, so if the current user of the system is running with the least privilege function, then hacker will not able to do anything. That is why we say implementing a least privilege is the most effective technique we have that we can use to prevent the ransomware attacks. But backup is the most effective, because even the least privilege was escalated and encrypt the data. We don't have any way by paying just ransom to them. So better you can obtain the copy of the data backup from the other systems. And when we're talking about the backup, your backup should be in a different system. Okay, so that's the most important thing. Okay, so next topic, what is SIEM? Security Incident and Event Management. Okay, so that is a full form we have. So when you're talking about the SIEM is a system which provides the centralized solution for collecting, analyzing and managing data from the multiple source. Okay, and if you're talking about further, SIEM is divided in 2 parts. One is called SEM and one is called as a SIM. There's a dedicated video I made on that. So SEM, when you're talking about SEM, stand for Security Event Management, which providing me real-time monitoring, analysis and notification of a security event such as suspected security incidents and all that. And SIM is called as Security Incident Management, which basically providing me a long-term storage of data along with the method of analyzing data, looking for trends, reportings and verifying for the compliance regulation. Example, like we have a firewall here and it is connected with the switch. So we have a system A, we have a system B, we have a system C. Okay, So there is an attacker which able to bypass the firewall. Example, okay, IP is 1.1.1.1, and further it able to hack the system A, able to hack system B, able to hack system C. So this is how the entire activity happens. So we will install the SIEM as a centralized monitoring tool. So if any activity happen on the firewall, it send the log to SIEM. Any activity happen on the system A, system B, system C, all that logs goes to the SIEM. So we have a centralized tool which collect the data from all the source. Then second, it does the normalization. Why? Because firewall generating a log in a different format. Example like 1.1.1.1, 10.43 TCP. And A is basically generating a log in 10.44 TCP and 1.1.1. So A generating a log in a different format, B generating a log in a different format, and firewall is generating a log in a different format. So we need a centralized portal where we can able to normalize the logs. So normalize mean making as a common log format. So we can able to correlate and we can able to generate the report. And by this way, we have a visibility what is happening. Is it clear? So SIEM is all about collecting, normalizing, correlating the logs to form the incident. Okay. So it combines the service of security event management and SIEM solution. And main focus of SIEM is on the security related incident events such as success or failed login attempts, malware activity, or escalation of the privilege. Okay. Let's move to the next interview question. So what is XDR? See, unlike the previous generating security solution, XDR is not limited to one security parameter. It combines the data from a networks, endpoint, email, IoT devices, okay, and your identity system. And it combines data from all the layer of IT environment and enrich them with threat intelligence to detect and detect the sophisticated and evasion threats when we talking about the XDR. So XDR is a combination of a technology that can aid the security team in threat detections, investigations, and response. And it combines the data from all the layer of IT environment and also enriches them with a threat intelligence to detect the sophisticated and evasive threats. So primary objective as XDR is to provide the pre-packaged automated threat detection, investigation, and response for the variety of threat. So you can say like that, people always get confused. XDR is SIEM. No, XDR is not a substitute for SIEM because SIEM has a use case outside of the threat detection, such as log management, compliance, non-threat related data analysis and management, while XDR is a fulfill of the threat centric use case and replace SIEM in regards of how we creating a things. Example like, if you're talking about the solution, source is any, destination is basically this, source port is any, destination port is this. So this is how we're creating a static rule. But XDR go beyond that. Okay, multiple login attempts happening. Okay, multiple tactics and techniques hacker has used by which they try to penetrate. So that kind of a identification, that kind of a pattern is basically detected in the XDR. That is why XDR is a modern threat detection mechanism that we basically use. Okay. So let's move to the next question. So can you tell me about what are the different sources of log SIEM we received? Could you please explain me about what are the different source of log SIEM can receive? So, if you're looking for a good security in the organization, it is very important to have a monitoring in place and proper visibility. And proper visibility is basically achieved by collecting a different kind of a log parameter. Is it clear? So in order to create an effective data model, you must first understand the source of security event data in your infrastructure. So you need to collect the log from IPS, you need to collect the log from firewall, server logs, endpoint, syslog, network traffic. These are the major sources we have from which we need to collect the log. We always say security is achieved by the visibility. If you have a visibility, if you have a oversight of the entire network activities, you can able to achieve the better security. And that is why whenever we trying to configure the SIEM, make sure we should collect the logs from all these source, by which we can able to create a unified event or meaningful event. So let's move to the next interview question. Okay, can you please explain me the difference between the vulnerability assessment and penetration testing? See, when you're talking about vulnerability assessment and pen testing, vulnerability assessment is all about identifying the vulnerabilities in the system. whereas a penetration testing exploit the vulnerability and penetrate into the system. Example is, we have a tester here, and we have a web server 1, and we have a web server 2, and we have a web server 3. So testers discovering the weakness in the system, only weakness, okay? Okay, they're checking the password, they found password is weak, they found some services are open, some applications are open, some ports are open, so they discover this kind of weakness. But penetration testing is a next level. In penetration testing, what happened, not only they identify the vulnerabilities, but they try to exploit the vulnerability and get into the system. So yes, PT is basically more aggressive, it impact the availability also. So whenever we're conducting a vulnerability assessment PT, we need to take an approval from the company. Might be they have an approval of VA, but you falling to that, you're doing a PT, which is basically unethical. So until unless you don't have an approval, you don't go for the PT. So vulnerability assessment is more like a verification, you can say, where we just confirming whether it's a vulnerabilities are there or not. And in order to exploit the vulnerability, validating which is a false positive or no, in that case, we go for the PT. It is same like knocking the door of every house in a flat is just checking whether quality of the wood is good. But penetration testing is like exploiting a door, breaking a door and get into the house. Okay, so vulnerability assessment is a systematic review of security weakness in an information system, and it verify if system is susceptible to known vulnerabilities, which is assign the severity level to those vulnerability. But penetration testing is a security practice where the pen tester attempt to find and exploit the vulnerability in a computer system. So that is the difference we have. So let's move to the next question. So how to prevent man in the middle attack? So first we try to understand what is man in the middle. Man in the middle basically mean if two systems are communicating in an authorized manner. So we have a system A and we have a system B. There is a hacker who tried to intercept what A is sending to B and B is sending to A. So that is called as a man in the middle attack. Okay, it is directly impacting the confidentiality services of the information security. So we need to find the countermeasure because it's a very frequent question asked in the interview questions, okay, interview parameters. So how to prevent man in the middle attack? So answer is use SSL, secure socket layer, by which we can able to secure the session. Implement the multi-factor authentication if someone intercept the password but still they need a OTP. Security awareness about, what is a suspicious URL, if you're getting some kind of a request, how to handle that. Use the latest version of high security web browsers, and most important, regularly audit and monitor your network to check if any suspicious activity happening. So these are some of the countermeasures we have. If you find this video useful, do share in your network and do share your view in a comment box. So this is all from my side team. Thank you. Goodbye.